What's up, everybody? Tim Anderson here, aka Renfell. Welcome back to another Pantheon Rise of the Fallen video. I'm starting to do a few of these now, but I'm actually not focusing on the gameplay. I'm here to talk about the business side of things, and today's discussion with the CohhCarnage had a lot of good gold nuggets if you sat through it and listened. Starting with the announcement that there is no alpha in 2022. I called it. If you heard me talking about it during the recent live streams where we're doing all the multi-streams with myself, Nathan Napalm, Bounty Code, Sparrow, and etc., I said it wasn't going to happen until 2023, and we got confirmation from Chris Perkins. Take it away, Chris.
There's going to be several more pre-alpha sessions throughout this year and into next year.
There you have it, folks. Now, that's not neither here nor there. It's not necessarily positive or negative news. It's just news. I was more interested in the business side of this discussion. Chris Rowan had a lot of good things to say, starting off with just sort of a kind of a breakdown for people on what an accredited investor is. It's a very generic breakdown that he gave, but it was fairly articulate in the sense that it's just someone who has enough liquidity. They have enough net lying around that the government doesn't consider them to be a risk when it comes to investments. In other words, if they invest in your company and you go belly up for some reason or another, they're really not going to be affected by it because they have enough liquidity, they have enough cash on hand to survive taking that hit. And the government wants to know, the oversight committee just wants to know that they understand the risks getting involved with a startup or in any sort of investment opportunity. And when you're doing all the paperwork to get investors on board, there's a lot of paperwork in order to go through the federal government and to make sure that you're ticking all those boxes off to make sure that you've given the investors plenty of opportunities to understand the risks involved with getting into your company, and that's just all part of that system. Accredited investors typically are people who have invested in something before, but not always, but it just generally means that there's someone who is accredited because they have a certain threshold of cash that they can throw around, and it's not going to hurt them if they lose it. What was really interesting to me was Chris talking about how the Series A funding is now finished, which means they are now open for Series B funding.
Pleased to say that with this Series A3, it's our last round of Series A, and from here we're moving on to Series B. That's an important step in the growth of a company. With it comes a higher price for the stock and probably, hopefully, larger amounts in the near future. So we're working hard on that already.
Now, Series B funding, as he said, doesn't necessarily lead to bigger investment drives, but it traditionally does. Usually what happens in Series B is the stock prices go up, and then you can go out there, and if you raised 100 people during Series A, and then you go out and raise 100 people during Series B, you're going to raise more money during Series B because those shares are worth more. So even though you got the same amount of people, it could be worth 2 times more, 3 times more, whatever the case is, based on the value of what you're setting those shares out at. Excuse me. Now, the next, I think, most important part of this breakdown was going into the fact that he says they have 35 total employees across the company, some of whom are part-time, and then breaking that number down a little bit further, he said they have the equivalent of 24 full-time employees.
There are 35 people on staff. Not everybody's full-time, so if you put that into an equivalent of full-time, it would be like 24 full-timers, but 35 people on staff.
So that means he's looking at the man hours, and he's saying we have these many man hours getting booked per month for payroll. Now, this is very important when you're doing budgeting because you need to be able to know who's getting paid what, who's a full-time employee, who's a part-time employee, who's a contractor. Now, because they are a California corporation, I'm assuming they're following California corporate law, which has some it has some trickiness and stickiness to it with wanting to make sure that the majority of your employees are working out of California and not necessarily employing a lot of contractors, and if you do, there are loops and hoops that you have to jump through with contractors. But that number is very, very revealing in and of itself. Now, I know a lot of people would like to break this down. I'm going to do some very basic math for people because they're obviously we don't know how much money they have stockpiled from before, and we also don't we don't know how much money they're bringing in from crowdfunding. But if we take the most recent investment of $2.4 million, 2, 4, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3. Not too many zeros. they're going to have to take 25% off of that immediately for corporate tax. That's just an average that you need to consider that's already spent for your taxes. Obviously, you can reduce that tax bill by quite a bit through accounting and a variety of other things. But if we take that and we take 25% off the top, we're taking 600,000 right off the top, minus 600,000, which means you're left with $1.8 million in net that you can spend on payroll. And he did say that their number one expenditure at this point is just bringing on more people and paying the people that they have. Obviously, they've talked about how important the budget is to them and how they're not doing frivolous spending. If I had to guess, I would say they're probably doing like the Bill Gates method, or as Elon Musk has talked about, these big guys who talk about how no one in a startup should be making more than 50 grand a year. 50 grand is about the baseline that most people are going to need to survive. So if you take $50,000 a year as a base salary, I could be way off on this, and they've got the equivalent of 24 full-time employees. That's $1.2 million in salary for 1 year, which means the $2.4 million really only gives them a runway of about a year and change. Let's say that they stretch it, but I don't think they are stretching it because they've talked about how they're hiring more people. So let's just say the 1.2 million gives them about another year of runway on top of whatever runway they already have. Now, we know that they're doing continual and ongoing fundraising. So that shouldn't necessarily concern everybody, but it is just from a business standpoint, the 2.4 million might seem like a big chunk of change. It's not, especially with the numbers that Chris Rowan gave us in that they have 24 full-time employees on the books in terms of man hours, assuming 50,000. Now, if they're only paying 40,000, then that number can go a little bit farther. I would highly doubt that they're paying more than that, but it could be. You never know. But let's assume at $50,000 a year base pay, then that's what's going out in terms of payroll is $1.2 million. So that gives them a year more with the additional funding that just got brought in. Not a ton, but it's another year. And during that year, you could be pitching to a lot more people. You're doing more fundraising. You're bringing in more funds from crowdfunding. It's plenty of time to do lots of cool stuff. My call to action time. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, like, and hit that bell icon so you get updates like this in the future. I don't only cover Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. I do a lot of different things here, so make sure you check out the playlists. If you want to support the channel, you can do so with a super thanks. Hit that button down there, pick your amount, buy me a cup of coffee, buy me a Ferrari. It's kind of up to you. And beyond that, you can also join as a member of the Adventurers Guild. It's that button down there. It's the membership here. It's $2.99 a month. We do a lot of cool stuff. You can also gift memberships. And I do stream every single day, mornings and evenings, and you can always drop super chats and stickers during live streams to support my journey as a full-time content creator, which is pretty awesome, those of you who have been supporting the channel. And of course, if you want to get involved with what I'm working on, which is not an MMORPG anymore, I'm working on The World of the Weave and the Void with my wife and my brother. It's a 5th edition tabletop setting, as well as a point-and-click adventure game and a book series. And we have cool people working on that project with us, like Nathan Napalm and Becca, who is Bounty Code and Sparrow's daughter, doing artwork for us. Been teasing some of that stuff out. We play our live D&D campaigns every Sunday night, so check all that stuff out, patreon.com/Wandering Hermits. Let's get back to the actual video. But I have to get that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen. Like, it's advertising. We also got the announcement of the next pre-alpha session, which is happening in September. CohhCarnage announced that he is now an investor for Visionary Realms, and he's also going to be playing for the first time ever live a pre-alpha session with them. He announced that today on his live stream. I'll let him talk about it.
This September, I will be able to play Pantheon for you for the first time on stream.
And of course, we also got the confirmation of some actual numbers regarding the population. Now, nothing concrete. Take this as you will. But Chris Perkins did talk about them having a few thousand current testers and wanting to get up to 10,000 plus in the alpha upcoming next year.
That feeling. But as we get into alpha and as we, grow from the current, few thousand testers that we have available now for testing into, 10K plus and beyond, once we get into alpha.
which is neither here nor there. It's just a little bit more insight into estimating how many pre-orders might have been sold at this point. I've heard numbers between 5 and 7,500. We don't have any confirmation of that in total. But given what he said today, I would say that we could probably eyeball a 5 to 7,000 number and say that's probably the amount of pre-orders that have been sold to date, or at least the amount of testers they have, which means people in who have tested at various stages. There could be more sales that have happened in total, and that's just the amount of VIPs and pre-alpha testers, which is still a goodly amount of numbers. So it just goes to show you that they are definitely on the right track in terms of having a healthy population. So at the end of the day, I was more interested in all the business stuff. I think Chris Rowan hit it out of the park today, giving us a lot of insight into the business side of things, which is what fascinates me the most. Again, my background being what it is, previously being the creative director on the Saga Leucemia and the CEO of Stormhaven Studios for 7 years, and the founder of that game studio, regardless of all the legal stuff that's going on right now. It's good to see these kind of numbers pushed out and talked about in the public, because it's great to be able to have that little sort of insight from a game dev and from a business perspective to say, cool, that's really informational. And that's the kind of information that makes me more inspired about the project. It's still not enough, though, to push me into wanting to buy a pre-alpha package. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I still need dates. I won't be making any purchases until there's actually an alpha announcement with a date attached to it. That's the point where I convert. So hopefully we'll be seeing that at some point next year, considering that we did get Chris Perkins talking about how there's still going to be several pre-alphas leading into next year before they get into alpha. So maybe next year at some point we'll see that alpha. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, I will be covering this game on a once in a while basis, most related to the business side of things. So thanks for tuning in. Let me know your comments below. See you next time.